Ready to step into history? Welcome to the 28th Massachusetts, Company B, an authentic Union reenactment unit based in Virginia with members across 6 states representing the famed Irish Brigade. Whether you're experienced or just starting out, if you love history, we'd love to have you in our ranks. Contact our recruiter to learn more. Please help our channel by liking this video, subscribing, and follow us on Instagram for more exclusive Civil War and reenacting content. The 28th Massachusetts, where history comes alive. Welcome to our tutorial on how to make the Wambaugh White Union Pants kit. Sky blue pants were a ubiquitous part of the majority of Union soldiers' uniforms, and there is no reason you shouldn't have a quality pair. This video is meant to help you to that end. Let's get started. This is the package you'll receive from Wambaugh White. You'll get the instructions on how to make the pants. We will go through this step by step, and there are a lot of steps. You'll get a History Fix flyer. If you don't know what a History Fix is, you are missing out, boyo. Our friend Will Eichler and team put out some amazing content spanning all eras. And actually, if you sign up through our unit, you'll get 30% off. And then you have all the fabric. So, once you unbox and lay everything out, it can be overwhelming. Don't worry, we'll walk you through it. You should have 2 of these, 2 of these, matching of these, 3 of these, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2 of these, 1, 2, 2 of these. You also have the pockets. You should have 1 and 2. And then you'll have 4 large pieces of blue wool for the legs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we will go through the supplies you'll need to make the kit. From the kit, you'll get these buttons. This thread. You get 3 pieces of beeswax, which will strengthen thread, prevents tangles and knots, and helps the thread glide smoothly through fabric. From your own supplies, you'll need sewing pins and needles. Here is how I store mine. Chalk markers in blue and white. You'll need a buttonhole punch, which allows for a more precise and accurate cut than scissors, and a keyhole cutter, which needs to be glued. This set comes with a small cutting mat. You need a sewing gauge to measure seams and as a straight edge. If this is your first project, I recommend getting some extra thread. This is from Tarte. Wambaugh will only send you so much, so if you mess up, you'll be out of thread. And you'll need scissors. Here we have fabric scissors, detail scissors, and thread snips. And that's it. So next we'll prep our thread. It comes from Wambaugh like this. So what we'll do is unspool it until it's a single loop, like so. So now that we have it unspooled in a single loop, it just happens to be the perfect size to use. Just take one side and snip it here, hold it together, and then snip the other side. We now have our lengths to work with. To store it, I take a chip clip and just clip the center. That way it stays tangle free and I can pull out thread as needed. Step 1. Pin pocket facing to pocket bags as shown, with the notched side lining up exactly and the opposite facing indented 1/2 inches from the edge. Overcast inside curved edge of facing. Be sure to make a right and left pocket by reversing the side on which the facings are attached. You'll start with your 2 linen pocket bag pieces. For your first one, have the point going up and to the right like in the instructions. Sometimes the notch will be more pronounced, but will be fine. Next, you'll take the piece that looks like a quarter of a circle and place it flush with the top edge and 1/2 an inch from the right edge. Now take the navette shaped piece and place it on the upper left, lining up the notches. you'll see that you can only place it on the correct way. Pin both pieces in place. There we go. This will be one pocket. Now you also want to make the mirror image, and I suggest doing that at the same time. So now that we have these pinned in place, we are going to overcast the inside curve on all 4 blue pieces. So what are we making? We're making the mule ear pockets. When we are done, this piece will become the outer inside portion of the pocket, and this piece becomes the piece you can see behind the pocket flap. We'll get this sewed up and we'll be right back. Now we'll show you how to overcast stitch. Just a warning, you will do a lot of overcast stitching in this project. First, we'll take our thread and run it through the beeswax a few times like so, and then thread the needle. Just a note, you'll run your thread through the beeswax every time. I always start my overcast by hiding the end knot. Come up through and pull, then go back through the linen direct beneath your first thread line, then once through, angle over at a diagonal and come back up. So again, go back through directly underneath, angle over and come back up. None of this will be seen when wearing the pants, so you don't need to be perfect, but it's always good to practice. Here is what the back side will look like. We'll get the 4 pieces overcast into place and be right back. Okay, so now we've overcast all 4 blue pieces to the linen. Here is what the back looks like. Now for the part that gets a lot of people. Step 2. Attach through all layers. The curved edge of notched pocket facing to corresponding curved edge of trouser front using a backstitch and a 1/4 inch seam. So what does that mean? Take your finished pocket and find the curved side, then find the corresponding curve on the long blue pieces, which are the pant legs. Only 2 of the 4 leg pieces will have that curve, 1 for each side. Take one of the leg pieces with the curve, flip it around and line the 2 curves up like so. Make sure it is flush on the top and side. Then you'll pin it in place and sew the curved edge using a backstitch with a 1/4 inch seam. Alright, so now we have it pinned together. We used our sewing gauge to measure a 1/4 inch in from the edge on both sides. Now sometimes the curves won't be an exact match. Most of the time you can just leave it, but sometimes you'll need to trim a little off. Now we will do a nice back stitch, which is the strongest stitch. So what I like to do is start by coming up through the bottom and making an X. Now go over a little bit and come back up through the bottom. The smaller the interval you make, the stronger the stitch, but the longer it will take. Once through, go back and down through the hole you just made. Then move down another interval, the same length as the previous. Come up. Go back and down through the hole you just made, and then just repeat the process. You can now backstitch. Okay, so we finished our backstitch along the curved part. Next, you'll cut out a few little notches, making sure not to cut the backstitch you just did. This is what the back side looks like, a very nice backstitch and the notches. Step 3. Attach opposite facing to back piece through wool only with a back stitch with the seam running 4 inches long from the top edge. Press seam open. So what on God's green earth does that mean? I'll show you. We have 4 long blue pant leg pieces. The 2 pieces we just made have this curved piece and have the pocket bags attached. This means you have 2 leg pieces left we haven't used. The remaining pieces should look like this. The shorter edge is the top, which I've marked with a T, and this long straight edge is your outer side seam. This is the bottom or the cuff, and the pointed part is the seat. You see how in the provided picture you have the right angle with blue on the bottom and the linen folded back. We need to find that. You'll have only one piece that will match that shape, and it's right here. Corner, corner. Now fold the linen down like that and we have our shape. Let's mark it with a T to help orient us. This might get a little confusing. First, flip the pant leg away from the pocket to get it out of the way, like so. Now, making sure we have both tops oriented to the right, take the unused leg piece, place it underneath your pocket and line it up flush on the top and the side. So now when you pull it down, you still match the provided picture. We'll pin this in place and be right back. Okay, so what I've done is I've tacked or basted the two pieces in place. Basting is a great way to temporarily put together a project to make sure things fit and understand how to reorient the pieces. You can see I just use a very loose stitch with white thread so I can see it clearly. As you can see, we are now all folded over itself, so when you are done it should look like this. On the top facing you, you'll have the linen piece that will become your pocket bag. The piece tacked to it is the long piece of pant leg with this long side seam. If you look at it from the top, it looks like this. Even though we haven't permanently sewn it, I wanted to show you what we are making, and it's also good to run through it to make sure everything is sewn correctly. First, you are going to take the navette shaped part with the curve and notches and flip it inside out like so. This is going to be the outside part of the mule ear pocket. Then it might need a little reorientation, but you'll then fold the other side of the pocket bag with the other blue piece behind the navette shaped piece. We now start seeing the makings of the pocket and side of the pants. With the pocket here, and then you can see the side seam running long ways down the pants. We are going to go over this again, but I wanted to explain what we will be doing. So now we've replaced the white tacking with the 4 inches of tight back stitch. This is the top of the pants. You'll have the point of the seat of the pants sticking out here, and you'll have what will become the side seam running down here. When you look down from the top, it will have 3 folds. Remember, for every piece you make, you are going to make the mirror image for the other side. So, let's get the other side set up. Here, we have the linen pocket bag attached to the pant leg with the curved side with a back stitch and 1/4 inch seam. The corner will be facing down and to the right instead of up, like the first step. Now, just like before, we take our remaining long piece and mark the top and the long straight side seam. Now, just like before, line up the pieces with the corner, top and side all flush. Remember to fold this part under and away, as you're only attaching the long pant leg to the back of the pocket bag, going through only 2 layers of wool, nothing else. Now we will pin in place. Next, per the directions, we measure 4 inches down from the top. Then we will make our back stitch along here and we'll be right back. Okay, so we've sewn both sides. Now on to step 4. Step 4, turn front piece, curved edge, right side out and press into place, making sure that the tabs at the top and side still point outward. Set the side tab of the front piece into the area between the back facing and trouser back piece, the area below the seam you just sewed. Pin thoroughly to keep in place. Attach tab to back piece so that the back facing and back piece are layered on the outside of the tab, making sure that the top edges of both facings line up. Sew with a strong backstitch to the bottom of the facings. Note, be sure that you're not sewing the remnant of the pocket bag attached to the back facing. This will need to be left loose. So we have our corner piece and our curved piece, and as I showed you before, we are just going to flip the navette or curved shaped pocket inside out like so. Then press or iron into place. Now we'll do it on the other side, same thing. Remember, the curved side, not the side with the corner. I'll press both into place and be right back. Okay, I've pressed all the seams down and it looks a bit different. I pressed open the 4-inch back stitch we did, as well as the front of the mule ear pocket. As you may have seen, step 4 is a bit confusing, but we'll make sure you get it bang on. For the tabs, they are referring to little pieces of fabric on the front and top of the piece that stick up. In our case, you see how the tab got sewn down a bit? Easy fix. Just make a small cut right here, making sure not to cut the thread line you just did. And you can see the tab now, the piece of fabric sticking up above the fabric line. You see on the side? Same thing. Our tab got sewn down a bit, so snip it, making sure not to cut the thread to release it. We now have our top tab and side tab ready to go. The next thing we're going to do is fold our pocket bag to make the pocket. This is where some spatial orientation skills come in handy, and Lord knows I struggle with that. What we are going to do is take the top blue piece and flip it under itself, which if done correctly will create the pocket bag. Ta-da! You did it, boyo. Let's do that again. We will lay it back out with the top of the pants to the right and the 4-inch back stitch seam center. Take the top blue wool piece and flip it underneath. Check it out. We now have the makings of a pocket. We have the pocket bag, which we will need to sew closed at a future step. And from the outside, you have the pocket access. We have also now lined up the entire side seam, which we now have to sew. I hope you like backstitching. Let's zoom in. Here is our 4-inch backstitch seam to help orient us. What we need to do is, do you see all this overlap? We need to get it in order so we can sew the leg side seam all the way down. You need to line everything up so you are only, I say again, only sewing through the blue wool, not the white linen of the pocket bag. In the end, you should have 3 layers of blue wool. Will it look pretty? In my experience, nope. So as oriented from the top, you will have your long wool piece as the top layer. Then you will have your tab, which will be your second layer, which we will pin in place and then add some more pins to help stabilize the side. Now we really see the pocket coming together. If we look at it from the outside, we see the makings of a nice side seam, which will be the most visible seam. As a reminder, you are only sewing the blue wool. Make sure you're not sewing any of the white linen. And then with this little piece of blue wool as the final layer, you should have 3 layers of wool. We will get this sewn up with a tight back stitch and be right back. Okay, so now we'll do the same thing on the other side. Here we have the curved part of the mule ear pocket. Now we are going to do the same flip we did before, thus creating the pocket bag. So here is our pocket, and our seams should line up the same way they did before. Now remember, if you need to release your tab, just give a little snip, making sure not to cut your thread line. Here is the side tab. And here is the top tab. Here is our 4-inch back stitch, and we are going to line up the 3 layers of blue wool to sew. Remember, do not sew any white linen. Line up the first layer and the tab and pin in place. Then take the final blue layer, line up and pin in place. And here we go, our 3 layers. The tab is right in the middle, and it's imperative you make sure it's there and sewn into place to hold your pants together. No one wants to see your thigh at an event. Now it's time to get ready for a lot of backstitching. Let's give it a lash. Okay, so just wanted to show you a quick close-up of the sewing. It's hard to see, but our 3 layers are in there. I've pinned the pocket bag back to keep it out of the way. The 3 layers are this piece orientated closest to you, then the tab, and then the short blue piece on top of the sandwich. We are going to run our back stitch with a 1/2 inch seam along this line of blue wool, making sure not to sew any white linen. Remember, per the directions, any seam that is not noted otherwise will be a 1/2 inch. Let's get it done. Here I finished the first run of back stitching through the area of the pocket bag. You can see we have our layered sandwich with the tab right in the middle and locked in. Now check this out. Flip it over and boom, we have the side of our pants. And here is our pocket. The pants are really coming together now. Step 5. Sew the remainder of side seams using a back stitch, 6 to 8 stitches per inch, ending 2 inches above the hem. Press seam open, continuing to press back 1/2 inch of the unsewn 2-inch portion front piece, but leaving the unsewn of the back piece flat. So we are going to deviate a little bit from the directions. Instead of ending our back stitch 2 inches above the hem, I stop 6 inches to allow adjustment. This is because while these kits are great, sometimes they need some alteration. So I'll back stitch these with a 1/2 inch seam all the way down, stopping 6 inches from the bottom. Okay, so I've completed closing the side seam with a tight back stitch with a 1/2 inch seam all the way down, stopping 6 inches from the hem. I've pressed the seam open. Here is what the other side or visible side looks like. Looks deadly. So, on to step 6 and finishing the pocket bag. Step 6. Starting at the base of the facing overcasting, close the bottom of the pocket bag using a back stitch, leaving the bottom edge raw. So this is pretty simple. We will just run a back stitch with a 1/2 inch seam from the folded edge to the end of our overcast. Don't worry if the pocket sides don't line up. That's fine. I just clip the excess off to make sure both sides line up. And there we go. Both pockets sewn closed nice and tight. Step 7. Turn under the remnant of the portion of the pocket bag near the back, facing that we left raw. It should now rest under the seam allowance from the back facing back seam. Overcast into place with 4 to 6 stitches per inch from the base of the facing to the top edge of the pocket. Press flat. So what that means is we have this raw linen edge right here. Admittedly, this seam should have been deeper so I'd have more to work with, but it will be okay. I trimmed off a little linen to improve fit and quickly pressed in a crease, so you can see it makes a nice clean edge. Once in place, pin and then overcast it down. And on the other side, same thing. A little trim and then fold it under. Okay, so we've completed overcasting everything into place. Now the raw linen edge is tucked away and tacked down. My overcast stitch has a diagonal side and a straight side. you'll see I put the diagonal side on the inside, so on the outside you just see these little thread points. Step 8. Top stitch curved mule ear portion of pocket front 1/4 an inch from edge with 6 to 8 stitches per inch. A top stitch is just a visible stitch, and while normally done with a straight stitch, I like to do my pockets with a back stitch. We'll just follow this curve and knock this out. And here is what the pocket top stitch looks like when it's done. Step 9. Pin triangular back yoke pieces to outside of back piece beginning at back edge and pinning evenly toward the front. Note, back yoke should not reach all the way to the side seam. Attach yoke with a 3/8 inch seam using a back stitch. Press seam open. This is an example of where you might need to trim pieces to make it work. This is the piece we received in the kit, and if we lay it flat you'll see that it overhangs both sides. Easy fix. Just move it up a little bit until it's the correct proportions, mark a cut line and cut to fit. Then it will be bang on. Alright, now that we have the proper fit, we are going to go ahead and pin it in place. Then we will measure out a 3/8 inch seam for our back stitch using our sewing gauge. After it's marked, you'll run your tight back stitch and then fold up and press. So here we go. We've sewn the triangle pieces on both sides with a 1/2 inch seam and pressed open. On to the next step. Step 10. Pin halves together along the seat seam, first lining up the back yoke seam and pinning outward from there. Do not be concerned if the seams do not line up perfectly. The original this is based on was not lined up. Using a strong back stitch, begin sewing 2 inches down from top edge, 8 to 9 stitches per inch. Sew it well. You will put a lot of strain on this seam. Press seam open. So we've sewn a mirror image of the back of the pants and put them together with the seams facing outward. We will start sewing the seat seam 2 inches down from the top of the pants, which you can identify by where the pockets are. So 2 inches down with a marked 1/2 inch seam all the way down. Make sure you make this back stitch tight. This seam will take a lot of abuse. We've completed sewing the 2 halves of the pants together at the seat seam using a very tight back stitch with a 1/2 inch seam and then press the seam flat, and we've stopped 2 inches from the top. If we flip it over, you'll have this nice straight seam. Step 11. Line up fronts at the tab and sew them together using a 1/2 inch seam. This will place your seam a 1/4 of an inch beyond the cut of the front. Press seam open. Okay, I've laid out the pants with the seat seam in front of us. We'll fold up each side so they meet in the middle and the pants are inside out. Here you can see the tabs. We'll line those up. I have already marked the 1/2 inch seam we will use. Pin them together and sew with a very tight back stitch. As you can see, it will be below the tab. And that's it. We'll get these sewn up and be right back. Short, fast run of tight back stitch. Press the seam open and that's it. On to the next step. Step 12. Pin the inseam together. Beginning first with the front seam and seat seam, then pin the cuffs together and evenly pinning the rest of the trouser leg. Some easing may be necessary. Sew with a back stitch with 6 to 8 stitches per inch. Press seam open. We will be sewing the inseam or inside of the pant leg. Remember, everything unless otherwise noted is a 1/2 inch seam, so I've already marked that on both sides all the way down. First, you'll pin the crotch together, then you'll pin the cuffs together, then you'll pin the middle. Same on the other side, pin the crotch, pin the cuffs, and then the rest. It mentions that you may have to ease a bit. I won't show that here, but it's essentially the process of sewing a longer piece and shorter piece of fabric together and have them come out the same length. Step 13. Press under 1/4 of an inch of the inner curved edge of the buttonhole fly lining and wool pieces as shown. Do not reverse from the picture. Overcast the buttonhole lining to wool piece with 5 to 7 stitches per inch. Press flat. Okay, so we've got the two pieces pinned together with the inside of the curve facing towards you. Blue wool is on the bottom. We've rolled under and pressed 1/4 of an inch of both the white linen and blue wool. Then we will overcast the pieces together. And here is what the piece looks like pressed flat. You may have to trim a little bit off, but it should look like this. Step 14. Handwork 5. 3/4 of an inch buttonholes into the buttonhole fly assembly, placing the top buttonhole 2.5 inches down from the top and the bottom buttonhole 2.5 inches from the bottom. Place remaining buttonholes evenly by finding the midpoint between those two buttonholes and then repeating using the center buttonhole. This is pretty easy. You'll mark 2.5 inches down from the top, 2.5 inches up from the bottom and make a perpendicular line at each point. Then what I do is I'll cut a piece of string the length between the 2 points, fold it in half to find my midpoint. I'll mark with another line, then do it again between the end points and the middle points to find the location for the remaining 2 buttonholes. Next, we will punch out our buttonholes. Remember, you must go through both the wool and the linen. We'll take out cutting mat and our buttonhole cutter, then you'll line it up and cut through both layers of fabric. And there we go. We'll now cut out the remaining 4 buttonholes the same way. Okay, so now the buttonhole stitch. The key to the buttonhole stitch is making sure your cut is all the way through and your 2 layers are either pinned or tacked together. And when you do it, you need to make sure you go far enough to get a good bite on the back side of the fabric. Personally, I like to double up my thread for buttonhole stitching and I don't use gimp. First, I'll go between the 2 layers of fabric and come up only through the top layer. Then I'll come up through the same hole. Before you pull the needle through, take the fabric end of the thread and wrap it around your needle and then pull the needle through. Then you move down a tad and repeat the process. When you get to the end of the buttonhole, do 1 stitch at a 45-degree angle, 1 straight up, and then 1 at another 45-degree angle to get around and start down the other side. All right, we've completed the buttonhole fly assembly and pressed it flat. Moving on. Step 15. Press under left front of fly area 1/4 of an inch and press under 1/4 of an inch of the shorter curved edge of the polished cotton buttonhole fly lining. Pin to left front starting at the top and working down. Note, lining piece may not reach to the bottom of the fly area. Overcast into place with 5 to 7 stitches per inch. Start with your pants right side out, so the pockets should be on the outside. You want the left side as you're wearing them. Thus, in our case, it's the side closest to you. Right, left. So we will take the front of the left side and press under 1/4 of an inch. Then we will take the corresponding piece of polished cotton and do the same thing, pin them together and overcast. So when it's done, we will have the 2 finished edges facing up like this. This is the finished work with a nice overcast stitch and tight seam edges. Step 16. Pin the long flat edge of wool button fly facing piece to the right front of the fly beginning from the top and evenly pinning downward. There may be some overlap of the facing at the bottom. Attach using a 1/4 inch seam and a strong backstitch. Press seam open, then press under front curved edge of fly facing piece. Once again, we are working on the outside, so you should be able to put your hands in the pockets. We just worked on the left side, so we need to work on the right. We are going to take this piece and lay it on the outside of the pants flush with the top. Start pinning at the top and work your way down. Then you are going to measure in 1/4 inch and sew with a strong back stitch. When you are done, you are going to flip it like this and it should be a nice closed seam. Okay, we are looking at the outside of the pants again. Here is the pocket. In the previous step, we used a back stitch to attach this piece. Then we folded it over twice and pressed it down, giving you this tight seam. Step 17. Press under 1/4 inch of the long edges of the corresponding buttonfly lining piece and overcast lining to wool piece with 5 to 7 stitches per inch along the front of curved edge first. Then set the straight edge into the seam allowance of the facing seam and starting from the top overcast into place, continuing across the bottom with the large stitches and completing with the small portion of the front side beyond the wool facing piece. Press all pieces flat. So we will take this small linen piece. I've already pressed over the edge 1/4 inch per the directions. Now what you'll do is take the right side of the pants and go to the inside of the fly, and all you will do is overcast the linen piece to the wool piece like this. So you will end up with 3 layers, 2 blue and 1 white. You'll have some excess here, which will be okay. Once you have the outside overcast into place, the next step is to fold the inside of the linen piece underneath the blue flap like this. Once you have that pinned into place, guess what? You'll overcast that into place. So if you look at the picture that comes with the directions, you'll see the overcast on the top and then on the bottom. And when you are done, this is where the buttons will go. We'll get this overcast into place and be right back. And here is the finished piece. You'll notice on the front my overcast is straight and on the back it's slanted. Remember that one side of the overcast is straight and the other slanted. I chose to do it this way on purpose, so when you look at the outside of the pants you just see small points of thread since the slanted part is on the inside. Step 18. Pin buttonhole assembly to left front, lining it up first at the top and pinning downward. Then pin left front over right front at base. From the outside, at the bottom of the fly opening, overcast left front to right until you reach 3/8 inch into the buttonhole assembly. Secure all layers at this point by passing the thread through the same points many times. This is the outside of the pants, which you'll do nothing to. On the inside, you're going to take the piece with the buttonholes and pin it to the inside. Make sure it's the correct orientation and that it's flush on the top and the front. The idea is, when this is done, there will be a flap covering your buttonholes. So from the outside, you'll see nothing. That's the easy part. The directions say to pin the left front over the right front at the base. The right side is the side we just did, and the left side is going to be the buttonhole side. Now go down to the base and you're going to overlap the left or buttonhole side over the right and pin in place. The reason we do this is because we don't want the front to be side by side, but overlap so you can button it. Admittedly, this is not my favorite part, and I'm sure you all can do a better job at it than I. So once you pin this over, you're going to overcast it very tight, starting from the bottom and stopping after you make it 3/4 inch into the buttonhole assembly. Once you get to the end, you are going to secure it by passing the thread through the same point multiple times. So that's it for step 18, overcast to here and then secure it. Step 19, beginning at the previous point, backstitch through all layers of the fly assembly with 6 to 8 stitches per inch. After approximately 1 inch of sewing, you will pass beyond the right side buttonfly portion and be sewing only the left front buttonhole portion of the fly. Continue sewing this with a tight backstitch, 3/8 of an inch from the edge of the wool portion of the buttonhole assembly until you reach the top. So in step 19, we are going to attach the part with our buttonholes to the pants by sewing down the inside edge of the linen with a tight backstitch. We'll have stopped our overcast stitch from step 18 about here, and this is where we start a tight backstitch through all the layers of fabric. As this is still pinned and not sewn, it's kind of hard to see, but I hope you get the idea. This is important. You need to mark your 3/8 of an inch seam from the wool portion underneath, not from the raw linen edge. Do not fold the linen over. So on the outside, you'll see a nice line of backstitching. Make sure you put the nice side of your backstitch to the outside. And we're back. We've sewn the buttonhole assembly to the pants with our tight backstitch. We've run our overcast stitch up from step 18 to here and then secured it. Then in step 19, we ran out a backstitch with a 3/8 inch seam to connect the buttonhole assembly to the pants. Step 20. At the bottom of the fly assembly, top stitch 2 parallel lines of backstitching at 1/4 inch intervals up from the first starting point. Using a tight running stitch, top stitch the left front through the first 2 layers of blue kersey only. Do not sew through to the buttonhole assembly or you will close off access to your buttonholes. I've already knocked out step 20. So here are the 2 parallel lines of top stitching. I've used a back stitch, and here is what the back side looks like. And then here is our top stitch, using a running stitch along the front of the fly. Just remember, do not sew through all the layers as that would close off access to the buttonholes. Only go through the blue wool and the brown polished cotton, and that's step 20. Step 21. Turn under raw portion of the buttonhole assembly so it tucks under the wool and polished cotton portions of the buttonhole side and overcast into place with 5 to 7 stitches per inch. So all we're going to do here is turn under the raw linen edge on itself and tuck it under the other layers to make sure it doesn't fray apart. If you don't have a lot of excess to work with, like here, I simply trim off a bit of the wool and polished cotton. Just be careful not to cut any threads. Press it down and overcast into place. Alright, so we finished overcasting the raw edge into place and it should look like this. Too easy. On to step 22. Step 22. Attach cuff facing pieces to each other along straight edge using a running stitch with a 1/4 inch seam. Be sure to make a right and left facing piece as shown. Press seam open. So we will take these 4 pieces, 2 long and 2 short. When you lay them out, make sure both angles are going the same way like this. Do not have them going opposite. Make sure they are the same orientation. Also, make sure you have 1 short piece on the bottom and 1 on the top. Then you will mark a 1/4 inch seam. It says to use a running stitch, but I usually use back stitches. I've completed this side to show you what it looks like sewn and with the seam pressed open. Once you complete these pieces, put them to the side. As with the drawers kit, I like to finish my pants cuffs last, just to make sure they are locked into the right length after everything else is done. So we are going to skip steps 23 and 24 and come back to them last. On to step 25 and building the pocket watch pocket. Step 25. Pin the watch pocket facing to the right front top edge, beginning 1 inch in from the side seam. Sew facing to the right front, using a backstitch with a 1/4 inch seam, making sure to begin and end the seam 1/4 inch from both edges of the facing. Clip seam allowance at both ends of stitching and press the seam open. So step 25 is a good example of why it's good to read ahead to see how each step leads to the next. In this case, the directions say to pin your pocket facing 1 inch from the side seam and then sew it with a back stitch. But you have to read ahead, because what will happen is the pocket facing will get flipped up and over with the bag attached. The whole construct will then slip into this little cavity you made in earlier steps. Each kit is a little different, and each will come out a little bit different, and you'll need to adjust. In this case, if I put it 1 inch in like the directions, it would overlap the cavity and we wouldn't be able to use it. This piece will be shifted over. So I moved it closer to the pocket seam to make sure it lines up with the cavity. The other thing to keep in mind is not to sew the pocket facing on through all the layers. You need to keep the cavity open. Only sew it through the 2 layers of blue wool, not the linen. The directions say to start and end your back stitch 1/4 inch from either end. Then it says to cut off the seam allowance. So if you stop right there, you are just clipping off the flappy end, and that's a technical term. Well, according to me. Step 26. Making sure to center it, attach 1 pocket bag piece to pocket facing with a running stitch using a 1/4 inch seam. Press seam towards pocket bag. We've attached the pocket facing to the pants and pressed up, and now we've centered and pinned the linen pocket bag piece to that facing, making sure the tops line up. I've already marked the 1/4 inch seam. When done, you will press it up and over like this. Then when you join the other bag piece to it, you'll see we've made a pocket, and then the whole thing will get tucked in. Okay, the top one is the piece we just sewed onto the pocket facing and pressed up like this. Step 27. Beginning 3/4 inch down from the previous seam, join the other pocket bag piece, right sides together, using a running stitch. Press back top edge of watch pocket facing. Tuck the watch pocket bag into the space between the pocket facing and the pocket bag of the trousers. Here we are looking at the linen piece I've already sewed. I've marked it 3/4 inch from the seam just to orient myself and not to sew, and also marked a 1/4 inch seam around the pocket bag to sew. After that's all set up, we will line up and pin the second pocket bag to the bag. I'll sew this with a running stitch since the pocket won't have too much pressure on it. Remember, do not sew the 2 linen pieces together at the top or you will close the pocket. The straight line is just to measure things. Do not sew it. Once you've sewn the curved portion of the bag, you'll tuck it in like we've talked about. On to step 28. Step 28. Beginning at the back vent, pin the waist belts into place evenly along the top edge of the trousers, making sure to catch the top tabs of the pocket facings and being sure that the pocket facings line up on their front edges. You should allow the waistband to overlap the trousers by 3/8 inch in the back on both sides, and pinning evenly will cause some amount of overlap on both fronts. Step 29. Using a tight back stitch with 6 to 8 stitches per inch, sew the waistbands to the trousers along the top edge. On the right front, skip the portion of the waistband where the watch pocket is present and continue onto the front. Press the seam open evenly except in the front where the fly assemblies are located. Here we are looking at the outside of the pants. We've pinned our waist belt on, lying it flat since it will be folded over. We'll start in the back of the pants with our overlap, which we'll talk about in a second. Pin it all around, making sure you've lined everything up because this is what will hold the waistband onto the pants. On the other side, you'll pin everything, but on this side, do not pin the pocket watch pocket. Just skip it, as we'll come back to that later. I finished the other side to give you an idea of what it looks like when done. A nice straight, strong seam. I've already pressed this over. Again, just make sure you capture all the fabric, especially the tabs, to join together, or your seam will have gaps in it. Let's finish the other side and get into the next step. Step 30. Now close the portion of the waistband where the watch pocket is located by sewing a 3/8 inch seam through the waistband, right pocket bag and rear pocket bag. Press this seam open as well. I've gotten the waistband on the pocket watch pocket side put on, except for the location of the pocket watch. Here is what they're asking you to do. We are looking at the pocket from the inside of the pants. Here it is from the outside. There are 3 layers you need to sew. The inside linen layer, the middle linen piece, and then the blue waistband. Then you will just continue your back stitch from either side. Be mindful not to sew your pocket shut and only sew those 3 layers. And double check the outside as you go along to make sure there are no gaps in the seam. So when we pin it, you'll see what it looks like from the outside. You see this little tab, it can sneak away from you, so make sure you get that sewn in tight as well. The front of the pocket should be loose in the wind. And here it is with the waistband completely sewn. A nice tight strong seam all the way around. Step 31. Using a back stitch, top stitch through all layer above and below the waistband seam on the right side first at the base of the watch pocket welt, 1/4 of an inch above the seam. Then begin a new line of top stitching at the same interval just past the watch pocket welt, continuing through all layers until it is even with the point where the back yoke begins. Now top stitch through all layers below the waistband seam, beginning at the point where the pocket tab enters the waistband and again continuing to the point where the yoke begins. Repeat this for the left side, top stitching below the waistband seam only. So what it's saying is, do a top stitch through the pocket welt 1/4 of an inch above the seam, and then continue the top stitch along the top of the waistband seam all the way around the pants, and then do another top stitch below the seam back around the way you came, and then do the same thing to the front side of the watch pocket. Then it says to only top stitch below the seam on the left side. While these directions are based on a surviving example, you can take some artistic license and I guarantee no one will know. I want these pants to last for years, so I use top stitching to add strength to the seams. If you press the seam flat and top stitch, you are really only tacking down the seam allowance with no benefit to the strength of the pants. Instead of pressing the seam open, I will press it up like this so both seam allowances are pointed up. So this way, when I do my top stitch, it's going through 3 layers, adding more strength to the pants. But you do you, since there is no wrong answer. We're back with our top stitching complete. You'll notice I only have it on the top of the seam. That's my personal preference as discussed in the previous step, but you can do as you wish. You can see my double locked seam allowance on the back. Don't mind my blue fingers. I was dyeing some Williams patent cartridge paper. Speaking of which, check out our video on that. Step 32. Press under 1/4 of an inch of the top edge of the waistband and press up 1/4 of an inch of the waistband that extends past the front. Trim off right front excess so that the waistband extends only 1/2 an inch beyond the front. Press the excess portions back onto themselves. Overcast left front turn back portion with 5 to 7 stitches per inch around the top, side and bottom edge. Step 33. Press under 1/4 of an inch all edges of waistband linings, making sure that you make a right and left lining. Set these into place on the waistband, press back the fronts and trim the excess as needed. Step 34. Overcast linings into place around the entire perimeter with 5 to 7 stitches per inch. Here is the inside of the waistband with the Schuylkill Arsenal marking, and it will eventually be on the inside of the waistband like this. What the directions are telling you to do is fold over the blue wool, then fold over the linen, and then, like everything else we've done here, you'll overcast into place. At this point you should be an overcast master and have no problems with that, but I deviate a little bit from the directions here. What I like to do is do a backstitch. So I will pin the linen flat to the pants, sew with a backstitch, and then when I flip it over it makes a nice clean internal seam. Either way is fine, and again I promise you, not only is it not wrong, but unless you tell someone, no one will know the difference. The only thing is, if you do it this way, make sure you fold over the ends like this so it's tacked down on the inside of the stitch. So eventually the front will look like that. The other thing I do is I square off the back ends. It comes with a curve and I found it's just easier to square them off. But again, that's just me. You do you. So here we go. The inside lining is complete. Remember, I've done it slightly different from the directions, but it's all good. We pinned it, sewed it with a tight back stitch, flipped it over and pressed it down, giving us this nice tight seam. Now, if you've done it like the directions tell you, it will look like this. This is from a previous pair I made, and you can see the overcasted lining in place. Either way, once you've sewn down the top, you'll measure and fold under the bottom of the linen waistband. And then guess what? You'll overcast that into place. Remember, I used the diagonal side on the inside, so you just see the thread dots on the outside. On the ends, you'll fold it underneath and sew it down with a tight overcast. And same on the other side. And this is totally personal preference, but I like to top stitch along the top edge there and along the bottom. I just like the hand sewn swagger it gives. Step 35. Top stitch through all layers of the watch pocket welt to 1/2 inch from the sides, then close the raw edges of the sides of the welt with a buttonhole stitch. Easy peasy. Top stitch across the welt like this. Then we will use a buttonhole stitch to close up the side. So what does that mean without a buttonhole? Well, I'll show you. Start it off as we would otherwise, with a single run of wax thread. Then grab a little bite and stop the needle halfway through. Take the loose end and wrap it around the needle, and then finish pulling the needle out. Then just move down a little and repeat the process. Alrighty, we finish our top stitch and buttonhole stitch. The white you see is the beeswax, which will come off after a time. Now it's ready for our pocket watch. One other thing you can do here is a slight field modification. On another pair of pants I made 2 small eyelets for the pocket watch chain since I didn't like it on my braces. Just an option to think about. Step 36. Affix 1/2 inch bar tacks to each pocket opening, first by passing the thread through the layers several times and then buttonhole stitching over the thread. Affix a bar tack to the back vent opening and at each cuff vent opening. So the locations for the bar tacks will be on each side of the pocket, here and here. On the other side, same 2 places. You'll also do one at the bottom of the back vent and the pant cuffs, which we haven't done yet. Now, how to do a bar tack. The purpose of Bartacks is to reinforce a place that will get a lot of stress, and there are a few ways to do them. To start, I'll come up through the back and then move over the length I want my Bartack, in this case 1/2 inch. Then I'll do that 3 more times through the same hole. You'll have these parallel lines of thread. We are looking to make a loop, so I will go back down on the same side of the line of thread that I came up on. It's a slow process, but I always make sure it's nice and flush on the back side. Do not pull the thread all the way through. Once through the bottom, cross back over your line of thread. Remember, we are trying to lock it down. You will come up across from your first run. Then go through the loop and pull tight. Now we are on the other side of our parallel lines of thread, and we'll do the process over and over, moving down the parallel lines of thread until our Bartack is complete. Just make sure you're always crossing the T. Cross that line of thread since we want to tack it down nice and strong, and that's it. When you are done, you'll have this nice tight Bartack ready to take the stress. Remember, the white is the wax, and it will eventually go away, leaving a clean run of thread. Step 37. Handwork a 1-inch buttonhole onto the left side waistband, setting it 1/2 inch in from the front edge and placing it at the midpoint between the top and bottom. Step 38. Handwork a grommet into each side of the back of the waistband, the opening of which should be no more than 1/4 of an inch when finished. Note, these grommets are not bound using a buttonhole stitch, but by simple overcasting done very tightly. So, most important part of step 37 is making sure you add the buttonhole on the same side as the other buttonholes, and then just follow the directions. Measure in 1/2 inch from the front and center a 1-inch line. Then just like before, use your buttonhole punch to make your buttonhole. Then use a buttonhole stitch to finish it. The back is similar, as we are going to work in a grommet into each side. The directions say 1 on each side, but I'm going to put in 2 just because. For these, I like to make a hole with my keyhole punch and then use my scissors to widen it. Unlike the directions, I like using a buttonhole stitch to secure them, but a simple overcasting is just fine as well. So, here we go. 2 grommets on either side with a buttonhole stitch. While I was back here, I just tacked down the loose sides of the back vent. For tying it, you can either leave it open, use a piece of shoelace, some twine, or cotton twill tape. Any are fine. I like to use cotton twill, so here we are. Step 39. Attach small fly buttons opposite their buttonholes and a large button opposite the waistband buttonhole. Attach suspender button on the right side just above the inner edge of the watch pocket welt and on the left side just above the pocket bar tack. Attach buttons to the back of the waistband 1/2 inch inward from the grommets. Note, trousers were only issued with 4 suspender buttons in place. The kit includes 2 more for your use if you should care to apply them in order to wear braces that have 2 prongs in the front. Normally these buttons would be placed approximately 3 inches away from the original buttons, though very often the soldiers would move the placement of both sets of front buttons to make the trousers more comfortable. Also note, buttons should be sewn on carefully in an X pattern, at least 14 to 20 stitches per button, and then the thread should be passed through the material, but not the hole in order to wrap the shank of the thread. What all that means is button time. First, the fly buttons. I will lay the pants out like this and mark the location of the buttons based on the holes on the corresponding side to ensure they are spaced correctly. Then I will measure the same distance from the edge as the buttonholes are. You'll then sew the buttons to the blue outside of the pants. Remember, there are small buttons and large buttons. The small buttons will go on the fly, and the one large button will be on the waistband. I'll show you all the finished button locations, and then we'll go over how to sew them on. Here are the fly buttons we just talked about. Here are the front suspender buttons. I mark 5 inches from the inside of the waistband for my first button, and then 3 inches from that for the second button. Now, if you are a seasoned reenactor, you'll know you will absolutely lose suspender buttons at some point. But here's a trick I use, and I haven't lost one since. I double them up. You can use issue tin buttons, but I found it best to use proper bone buttons. Again, it's one of those things that no one will ever notice and will save you from trying to sew these back on by candlelight. On the back, I doubled up the buttons and went a little bit farther in than the 1/2 inch from the grommets, as in the directions, but do what works for you. And now, how to sew a button. So to start, I double up my wax thread, start from the back, come up, down, up, and then thread my button. You'll spear the opposite hole on your button and then come back down as close as you can to where you came up. What I will do is I will hold the button away from the pants to give space for it to work. Some people use pins, spacers, or don't bother, but this works for me. Then we will just repeat the process, making an X across the top of the button. I try for 5 to 6 passes, which is 10 to 12 layers of thread, since the thread is doubled up. Once we've sewn our button on, come up through the back, but do not go through the button. Instead, wrap the button 3 to 5 times and then spear the wrap you just did and come out the other side. Then come back down and lock down your thread. And that's it. Easy. Step 23. Press bottom of cuff hem up 1/4 inch all around. Step 24. Beginning at the inseam, pin facings to turned up position of the bottom hem. Overcast with 5 to 7 stitches per inch along the bottom hem, edge first, then interior edge. Note, the turned back portion of the front piece from step 5 will have the facing sewn on top of it like normal, but the back piece will be sewn into place with the raw edges butting against each other and the stitches pass through both layers. Press both cuffs thoroughly. Remember, we skip these steps since I like to finish the pants before I size for length to ensure a proper fit. In this case, I had to remove about 1.5 inches from the bottom. Not too bad, and they would certainly be fine if I hadn't. I just have rolled them up. Whatever you decide, for steps 23 and 24, start with your pants inside out. First, you will press up the bottom of the cuff all the way around 1/4 inch to the inside of the pants. Remember, we stopped sewing the leg hems about 6 inches from the bottom. Well, now, after sizing them, we need to continue the back stitch down to 2 inches above the bottom of the pants, only on the outside seam. On the inseam, the inside of the leg, finish your back stitch all the way down to the bottom. After you finish pressing up your cuffs and finishing your back stitch, take up the cuff facings you made in step 22. You'll notice on the cuff you will have a long piece and a short piece. Well, that corresponds to the cuff facings. with the seam allowance against the pants, line up the cuff facings to the corresponding leg pieces, short side to short side and long side to long side, and pin in place. Now overcast them on. When you are done, it will look like this. The cuff facings overcast onto the leg, seams lined up, thus locking down the cuffs. Here is the outer seam with the allowances sewn down, and we have our vent. And here is our overcast stitch on the cuff facings, nice and tight on the top and bottom. Don't forget to add a bar tack above the vents as noted in step 36. Press all your seams open. And boyo, you just finished your first set of pants. Well done. Cuffs are done with the bar tacks. All seams are pressed down. All buttons are on nice and tight. And that's it. I'm sure you did a bang on job. We really hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully it was helpful in your sewing project. Make sure to check out our other video on drawers to complete your look. Please like and follow us on YouTube and Instagram. And if you are interested in falling in with the 28th Massachusetts, hit us up.